that. Thank you, Annika, for reminding us. I don't know who I sent this list to. I sent it to a bunch of people, and here we go. So, 505. Is that Eric?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna rename Eric. And as all these people get on the call, it's nice to have Katja join us, and I guess we will give another minute or so, but I will throw out a popcorn question that you can think about, and because we're coming up on Thanksgiving, I want you to think about your favorite, and we won't just make it Thanksgiving, just make it a favorite holiday dish. And we'll leave that wide open. So think about food, and one of my favorite subjects, and then maybe we'll come up with a good recipe and make everyone hungry. So I guess, should we get started, Jeff? I don't know. Do we have a? Oh, wait, Eric, why do you show up with Megan's sign in? That's so random.
It's the curiosities of Zoom.
Okay. Did she maybe she shared her sign in with you at some point? Do we have a scribe?
Let me ask the question. I was wondering if we could switch the order up a little bit, since we have a guest, Kasha's here today. If we could maybe do, after we do intros, get Kasha's, give some backstory and a Q&A with him, and then do the updates at the end. Would that work for people?
Oh, I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay. I'm happy to do some scribing as much as I can. I'm actually going to do it in a different document. I just find it's easier to work in a blank Google document. So anybody else want to scribe besides me? Come on, I know everybody really wants to.
I can take notes, and then I'll add them in after.
Yeah, that'd be great, especially as far as who's participating in any of the updates and stuff. That'd be awesome. So Cecilia, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to you to have you share your favorite holiday dish.
My favorite holiday dish, probably anymore, would be stuffing. I didn't like it as a kid, but it's kind of my favorite thing now, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever. So that's...
Is there you got to be specific. What kind of stuffing?
Just pork stuffing. I'm happy with stovetop stuffing, frankly, but there's better stuff that's made from scratch out there. So I will jump over to Annika down there. What's your favorite holiday dish?
The first one that came to mind is I made a sweet potato casserole dish last year. I'm still new to Thanksgiving, but it's sweet potato, coconut milk. It's just really creamy, rich, delicious. I think sweetened with the dates instead of sugar, so it was a fairly clean, made from scratch dish, which was amazing. And since my husband doesn't eat sweet potato, I had it all to myself. And I am going to kick it over to Hassan.
Hello, everyone. So favorite holiday dish would have to be pumpkin pie. I eat it before dinner starts. I eat it during dinner, and I eat it after for probably a couple days. And I will go over to Tyler.
Thanks, Hassan. Hi, guys. My favorite holiday dish is red hot cinnamon stewed apples. Something particular to my family. So that is something I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I bought 2 bags of apples. My mom's on her way. So yeah. And I will pass it to Eric.
Everyone, let's see. One's not a dish, so I'll say pecan pie, because it's one of the things that in my small repertoire of things that I can
Pecan.
make. So Depends on where you're from. I've been both. So depending on the holiday, you know, depending on who I'm with, it's pecan or pecan. So that's that. And my wife makes a really good red chili sauce that goes well with turkey and some other stuff, kind of a little bit of a mole to it, but that's just a sauce. So looking forward to that. And I think Kasha.
You're muted, Kasha. You're muted. Nope, you're muted. There you go.
We'll do it this way.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
All right, you guys can hear me now? All right, great.
Yes.
Is there an echo or is it just normal? It's just normal.
Normal.
Okay, great. Sorry for the technical snafu. I really enjoy a bread pudding that my wife makes, and she refuses to make it except at Christmas time, which means I only get to have it once a year. So I wait all year long for bread pudding with a lovely little caramel glaze that goes on top of it. It's awesome. And let's see, who's left? Cecilia?
Great, thank you. So an unusual holiday dish that we have when I'm with my father's side of the family is we make sticky rice stuffing. And we usually probably only have turkey just so we can have sticky rice stuffing. So if you've ever had sticky rice at a Chinese restaurant that gets put into like those bamboo leaf wrappers or whatever, that's what we do. It's got shiitake mushrooms and Chinese sausage and all kinds of stuff. So it's just an Asian version of stuffing. So, all right. And then we're going to turn it back to, do I turn it back to you, Jeff, to introduce Kasha?
Yeah, I guess I'll let Kasha introduce himself, but I want to give a shout out to Hassan for making the connection and bringing Kasha onto the call. So as people probably saw, Kasha is Executive Creative Director at Skidmore Studios in Detroit. And from what I know, they have recently released a campaign to tell stories of entrepreneurs in Detroit. And Kasha, if I got anything wrong there, correct me, but fill in the details about what that is and some successes and lessons learned along the way, and then we'll open up the questions, I guess.
Great, sure. So I guess that is, I'll just take it from here then. And you guys interrupt at any time if you have questions. We don't have to wait for a formal Q&A time at the end. So interrupt as we go. So Jeff and Hassan asked me to share the story of how we were involved and what we did in telling entrepreneurship stories in Detroit. So I'd be happy to do that. Fast forward, just so you know, it's called In Good Co., short for In Good Company. That's what ultimately the program is called. And this started about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, as an idea from the New Economy Initiative, or NEI. And NEI worked with Skidmore and then two other agencies. One was called Love Yo George. John George is the name of the guy that really led that side of the things for them. And then another group called People and Projects, James Fagan. So everything I talk about is simply, I was one part of a much larger group of people that, hey, In Good Co., right there. Tyler's got it. How did you get that, Tyler? Okay, it's a secret. I thought it was,
Hassan did
I thought it was a Detroit, I thought it was a Detroit only thing. That's great. So background, so you guys understand, and I'm going to walk you through some of the materials so that you know where this came from and how we built it, so that you'll understand what it is that we did. I don't want to just talk about the storytelling. I want to talk about how we got there. Hopefully that's of interest to you. So first off, background. None of you guys are from Detroit. Is that true? One person. Hassan's from Detroit. Okay, great. So Hassan might know. The rest of you guys probably don't. Detroit is a very unusual town. It has characteristics that are unlike any other major metropolitan area in the world. Predominantly, the characteristics are, if I sum up, 50 years of history in a sentence, is that everybody with money who was white left and went to the suburbs, and everybody who didn't have money and was of any color other than white stayed in Detroit. And so we had a lot of polarized population, and challenges to overcome. And unfortunately, that meant that in the early, call it the early 2000s, you've got Detroit at the center of Southeast Michigan, and then you've got this ring of suburbs all around it. And those suburbs wanted nothing to do with Detroit, and Detroit didn't need anything from the suburbs. They were just two completely separate metropolitan entities. That being the background, I only tell you that for context so that you understand. About 10 to 12 years ago, a guy by the name of Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans, he decided he wanted to reinvest in Detroit. It was his hometown, and so he decided he wanted to bring his Quicken Loans base of operations, his HQ, into actual downtown Detroit. And this was a crazy, crazy idea because he's bringing 2,000 suburbanites out of their comfortable suburban world into a downtown urban environment and making them come there every day. And when he did that, he also began investing in other businesses in the downtown core. Now, our downtown core is very small. I don't know what cities you guys come from, but our downtown core, you can walk across it in about 5 minutes. It's a very small, compact little downtown, and then the neighborhoods start right outside of the downtown itself. So he started investing in other businesses in downtown. While he was doing that, by no fault of anybody's, just kind of the way things happen, it became a lot of stories of entrepreneurship of people that looked like those who came from the suburbs and came downtown. So you had suburbanites who made good, who came downtown and started a new business. So, for example, Alex Clark is a woman who started a chocolate company called Bon Bon Bon, and she started that down in downtown. She's very popular, very successful. You've got another woman, Alexandra Clark. She started the Empowerment Plan that makes coats and sleeping bags for homeless people. But these are stories, and then you've got Dan Gilbert investing in startups and tech scene operations, much like Silicon Valley of the Midwest kind of stuff. And so that became the entrepreneurship story in Detroit for the last, let's call it 5 to 8 years. Because that was the entrepreneurship story in Detroit, it wasn't reflective of Detroit as a city. It did not reflect the entrepreneurship stories of the neighborhoods, because by contrast, you had a guy by the name of, I'm looking it up here, Joe Spencer, who's been running successfully Louisiana Creole Gumbo since 1982, who has both restaurants and a mobile operation. And nobody knows anything about Joe Spencer. He's never celebrated as an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurialism as a career path was never really talked about in the Detroit neighborhoods. It's simply what I do. I got this thing, I do this thing with food, or I do this thing with clothing, or I do this thing with motorcycles, or whatever it is. I just do this thing. But nobody ever talked about entrepreneurship because it was just about how you made your living as a person. And the entrepreneurship, quote unquote, entrepreneurship stories became these basically suburban white kids making good in this cool new urban environment. So I tell you all that backstory to describe why NEI, the New Economy Initiative, found a couple of years ago, they really wanted to create a culture of entrepreneurship in the neighborhoods of Detroit, in Detroit itself, so that Detroiters would believe in entrepreneurship as a viable path for themselves and for their communities. And to do that, they needed to flip the script from talking about all of these typical and stereotypical entrepreneurship stories of Alexandra Clark and Veronica Scott and the ones that we keep hearing about, to they needed to start telling the stories of Detroiters who were entrepreneurs. And so we had to go create a movement of entrepreneurship and stories of entrepreneurship that were not the ones that we've heard in the past. So that's the background of why In Good Co. was launched and started and what it was trying to become. I think this might be a good time to pause because I just kind of threw a lot of information at you. I'd love to jump into what this thing is, but is there any questions so far? No?
Let me just summarize that real quick. So basically, because it reminds you of the story that Stephen Rodriguez had a chat with him in Washington, D.C. It's basically shifting the narrative of entrepreneurship from just the white entrepreneurs to the actual, what actually makes up the city, the real representation of the city. Is that about summarize that?
Yeah, you just said it in a sentence. I should have had you just say that for everyone. We could have saved a lot of time, but that's the background of Detroit. is that we need to take the oxygen away from the stereotypical white suburban kid entrepreneur stories and give it to the myriad entrepreneurship stories that are happening across the socioeconomic and racial spectrum in the actual neighborhoods of Detroit that is already happening organically. It was like we didn't have to create entrepreneurship stories, we just had to tell them. Like, it's like find them, like you ask two people and then they're telling you about somebody, and then you just find that person and then you just bring that to life. Like, that was essentially what we're doing here with In Good Company. So thank you, Tyler. Nailed it. Love it. Okay, so let me share with you guys the process. I think the challenge was that New Economy Initiative knew in their gut that there were these stories and that they could be told. Skidmore, we've been in the city for 60 years. We know about these stories. We know what this, we have been involved in these kind of community development projects for many, many years. Love Yo George, the other agency, People in Park Projects, the other agency, we knew all of this stuff existed. It was a question of how do we bring this to the world in a way that starts to resonate and make sense so that we can begin to a compelling narrative that is distinct and unique and branded separate from the narrative that already exists of the suburban techie white kids that are doing their entrepreneurship. So I'd love to share my screen because I want to walk through some things. So can I do that? Oh yeah, it looks like I can. Okay, cool. I'm going to flip the screen share. So the first thing is this right here. We did a discovery on storytelling projects and found a few things that we thought were pretty interesting. First, nobody locally was doing what we are trying to do. Secondly, we found that we needed an upfront thesis statement for capturing attention and for attracting the right audience. We couldn't just say these are stories. We had to give everybody a hook and a reason to believe in them. We also found that repeat visits to local sites and stories is unlikely because what we end up doing most of the time when we try to tell stories locally is we cast the net really broad. And by casting the net really broad, we appeal to nobody because we're trying to appeal to everybody. So we found we need to try to appeal to some very specific folks for very specific reasons. And I'll unpack that in a second. Another key thing is just because there's a story, it doesn't mean it's worth telling or hearing. And this is really important as we were building and uncovering these stories. Just because it exists doesn't mean it has to be told. There has to be some there has to be some meat on it. So you can't just tell any story. You got to find the ones that have a reason and a hook. Also, we need a clear call to action coming out of these stories. We can't just tell stories and expect people to know what to do with them. We have to tell them what they should do with them. And then if you guys are familiar with How I Built This is a really good program of storytelling about entrepreneurs, but they're really the only one that we found that was like actually approachable, that actually drew people in, that you wanted to listen to it just because of the way they had built and developed the content. So that's the first thing I want to share with you. Let me move on because I want to share the next piece, which was the strategy that we built. And that is right here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we built a strategy for In Good Company. You guys can all see my screen? Yes, okay, great. So first off, what drives In Good Company? We first developed really just using Simon Sinek's what, how, why framework. What is it that we do? Well, we are peer-to-peer stories. Important, these are stories about people that are like me, they're peer-to-peer. Secondly, what we are is we're a network of business growing resources. And thirdly, we are a practical roadmap. If we just tell stories, we've missed the mark. If we're just business growing resources, we've missed the mark. If we're just a roadmap, we've missed the mark. We have to be all three of those things. We also have to be all three of those things in inspiration, accessibility, and support. We have to inspire, we have to make it accessible, and we have to show and give people support because ultimately in the why, we're here to create a culture of entrepreneurship in Southeast Michigan that is actively supported by the local public and business communities. That then drives through the for whom, which was that narrow thing. Who are we really doing this for? Who's the audience that really needs to care? And it's Southeast Michigan entrepreneurs. By specifically defining we are creating stories for Southeast Michigan entrepreneurs, we've wiped off pretty much everyone else, which was a really big benefit and asset in creating these stories. We are here to tell stories to other entrepreneurs about entrepreneurs. If you're not an entrepreneur, the story is going to be maybe interesting, maybe not interesting. That's fine. We're here to make sure that other entrepreneurs in any stage are informed and inspired and enlightened by the things that we have to share. So then we've created this positioning statement for aspiring to establish Southeast Michigan entrepreneurs. In Good Co is a living platform for peer-to-peer stories, practical tools, and connections to a growth-focused network that help you start or grow your business. That statement, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but that really packs in a lot of what you can see we're here to do. The thing I do want to spend some time on is this next bit here, these branding strategies, and this is where it started to get really real. So first off, what branding strategies are the actions that the brand will be known for? What things are we going to do out in the world that we're going to be known for? So first, we're going to inspire with stories of people who look like me in all stages, from startup to success. It's really easy to just tell startup stories. It's really easy to just tell success stories. It's a lot harder to find stories that look like me, whatever me is, in all these different facets and socioeconomic and racial spectrum that Detroit is, that are in all these different ranges. Because ultimately, we want people to read these or see these stories and say, oh, I see myself in that. Because we want to communicate and show that entrepreneurship is an accessible, approachable, and viable career choice. Right now, the cultural mindset in Detroit is that entrepreneurship is just something, quote, some people do who have money that's backed by financial backers and banks. They don't think of entrepreneurship as the side hustle that I'm doing or the thing that I'm doing here that's providing my living that I've been doing with my mom for 32 years. No, that's entrepreneurship too. I can do this. I can be an entrepreneur. That's awesome. Because then we get to the next thing. We want to show support for entrepreneurs with practical, useful tools and connections. This is where entrepreneurs struggle. They don't know that there's help that's available to them, so they're floundering around, making the same mistakes over and over, making the same mistakes other entrepreneurs have made without actually knowing and seeing, hey, this has been solved already. I have access to these support tools, so I don't have to make the same mistakes, or I have these connections that I need to take that next step for my business. Ultimately, at the very end here, we want to show how the Southeast Michigan culture, community, and economy is positively impacted and changing because of entrepreneurship. Quote at the bottom, my role matters. My role as an entrepreneur, the thing that I'm doing, it does provide me and my family a living, or it provides 2 or 3 employees a living. But more than that, it elevates the Michigan economy. It matters to my community. And then for everyone else who's around me, my support network, my family, my friends, the people who purchase from me, their role matters as well in supporting the Southeast Michigan economy and building the economy up. Ultimately, you can kind of see this big statement along the bottom here. The thesis statement for the whole thing is, I am not alone. I am an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs suffer from kind of that mental disease of I'm the only one who's going through this. You're not. There's so many other people who are just like you, who are going through exactly the same things, who have been through the same thing, and we want to share and bring to life all those stories so that you know that you are not alone, either in your starting it in the very beginning, or in as you're in the middle of it, or as you've been doing it for 40 years and you have things to share with others. The last thing I want to share with you guys here in this strategy document is these messaging themes, and this is really important here. The common and consistent things that In Good Co is talking about. First, you're not alone. There are others like you, and there's help for you. I just talked a bunch about that. Secondly, entrepreneurial businesses are every size, every kind, every age, and every stage. The narrative about entrepreneurial businesses is so often startups and young kids and, often one color or another color. Like we have these very small little micro demographic pockets we put entrepreneurs in. Entrepreneurs are any of those kinds of things. Thirdly, you as an entrepreneur need to find your village, because no one does this on their own. Like, we love the hero entrepreneur story. Elon Musk built, SpaceX out of it in his basement. Garage, he built rockets in his garage. No, he didn't. You need a village of people who are going to help you along on your path and on your journey. And then we have and can connect you to the tools and the resources and the people that can help you do that. The last two are totally intertwined. Everyone in the community has a role in entrepreneurship, whether you're supporting as a friend or family, or whether you're purchasing, or whether you are an entrepreneur, because ultimately when entrepreneurs thrive, Southeast Michigan thrives. That general trend that when people are applying themselves and going to work and putting their boots on and making it happen, the community thrives and gets built up and moves forward. So that's a lot of theoretical strategy that then lead us to start building the actual stories and stuff. I'd love to start sharing the stories with you guys. It's another good spot for a pause. Any questions as we've gone into this so far?
Great stuff. I have lots of questions, but I wonder, I want to make sure other people who haven't get a chance, or maybe we should just hold off and you may address it in talking about the stories.
Okay, great. I'll move forward. So what we had done was we recognized the problem. We did discovery to figure out what was working and not working locally and nationally. We developed a strong strategy that would launch and push this thing forward. Ultimately, this is a lot of prep and it's a lot of theoretical work because we know that it'd be very easy to just run out and start trying to tell entrepreneur stories. A lot harder to do it with good, solid, intentional, strategic grounding that we knew would lead to success. So we did all of this in order to get to the next step, which is about the stories themselves. So let me pull up the next document for you. Hang on a second. And that is the content strategy. So content strategy. So what this is a oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Hang on. Try this again. Hang on, guys. Where's my content strategy? Content strategy. Here we go. Sure. Content strategy. All right, you guys looking at this NEI platform interview content strategy in brief? Yes? Okay, good. Awesome. So first off, what we did was we developed this is, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages, a content strategy that would tell anybody who was involved in the project what they were actually doing. Whether I was an interviewer who was interviewing these entrepreneurs, whether I was a content developer who was creating podcasts or videos or social media nuggets, or whether I was a videographer who was capturing the videos, I would know the bigger picture and the bigger narrative that this all fits into. So first off, we started with a project intro just to introduce people to the project, which I just did for you guys. We shared with them the primary audience, the secondary audience. We shared the brand strategy and the key theme of I am not alone, because we wanted to make sure that anybody who was involved in the content development would bring out that idea that I am not alone, entrepreneurship is a team sport. The front-facing theme is that everyday entrepreneurs, these are everyday entrepreneurs, and we're emphasizing the entrepreneurial spirit within everyday people. It's easy to make entrepreneurs into superheroes when they don't have to be. They're just normal everyday people who saw a problem or had a need and went out and did it. Then we went through these content goals so people knew why we were doing this. Then it gets really interesting. We developed this whole content format options, which was an entire segment that described whether you're doing a long-form video story or a podcast or a written transcript or quotes for teasers, whatever it is, these are specifically what you should be capturing to build the overall brand understanding of these stories or of the overall In Good Co brand. And then we also identified that there's going to be other story outputs. There's essentials, meaning these go-to resources from any one particular entrepreneur. There's going to be key resources that help them directly in their journey. We also had this section called Words to Live By, quotes or mottos that would be pulled out of the entrepreneurial stories. And then we described where the content would live: the website, the social NEI social media, the print collateral, etc. You'll see, by the way, as a quick aside, this is called the platform right now. In the context of the development of the work, we still didn't have the name, so we're just calling it the platform. But anytime you see the platform, it means In Good Co. Then we went through and defined interview questions and actually helped people understand as interviewers what is it that we could ask these entrepreneurs. So we started to build similar and synonymous stories that people could relate to. These weren't the questions you had to ask. This was just a roadmap for interviewers. Then the part that was really cool is we developed individual story arcs. So we had about 10 stories that we started off with, and we went through and we analyzed each of these entrepreneurs and talked to them in pre-interviews and found the story arc for each entrepreneur. So example, Alice Brazelton, we called her the unexpected entrepreneur. She does Brazelton's florals. I think she was either the first or the only African-American florist in Detroit. She's been doing it for 50 years. That's an entrepreneurial story nobody has been telling. She's the unexpected entrepreneur. She wasn't intending to be this. She fell into it. You've got Naija Bey, the Mama's Hero. She is a doula who is helping new moms and in their in childbirth, etc. You've got Clement Fame Brown, the side hustler. You know, he developed a clothing line as a side hustle. That he's a new kid on the block, so to speak, in terms of the entrepreneurial story. But we described his story. The one I really want to point out to is here, Carol Himmelho So Him-O-Ho department store was a brick and mortar department store in Detroit, just like Hudson's department store for 50, 60 years in the glory days of Detroit back in the early part of the 20th century. That department store shut down many, many, many years ago. As the granddaughter of the Him-O-Ho legacy, Carol is relaunching an online click and order, not brick and mortar, version of department store. Like, that's a cool entrepreneurial story that's completely different than any of these other ones. There's another one in here that I think is really cool. Hang on, let me find it. Oh yeah, G.S. Talukder, I always get his name wrong. Bengal Auto Sales. This is an entrepreneur in Detroit who focuses specifically on selling used cars to his Bengali community, mostly because they speak Bengali, they don't speak English. And so he's built a business as an auto dealership, as an entrepreneur, specifically to solve that problem. Or you've got Brendan Sang, who's the green giant of Michigan, who came from up north in Michigan and brought all the goodness of Michigan agriculture down into the city so that people in the cities who experience the goodness of local Michigan agriculture. So we just got these wide variety of stories, and I shared that with you because I think that was the important part of building the In Good Co story and the In Good Co brand, was that we intentionally went out and find super wide-ranging kinds of stories that were all different from each other, and then we did the intentional work ahead up front of using smart strategy and good copywriters and good interviewers to figure out how do I make each story unique so that when people get into In Good Co, it doesn't feel like it's the same old, same old. It always feels like it's something different and something new, and we can really broaden people saying, oh, that looks like me. That's the kind of person I am, or I relate to that even though that's not entirely me. I get that entrepreneur's story as their journey is a late-stage entrepreneur, or their journey is an early-stage entrepreneur. I can see all those different kinds of stories there. So those were the stories. Now I will do the big reveal. If you haven't gone to In Good Co yet, I'll pull that up. Where is my In Good Co? Let me pull this up for you here. In Good Co, Google Chrome, share. All right, here we go. Put this up here. Oh, no, hang on, let me move this. Sorry, guys. In Good Co. There we go. So this is the In Good Co website. This launched just a couple of weeks ago. So we can see Detroit entrepreneur stories from startup to stay up. So right off the thesis statement, if you see yourself as a Detroit entrepreneur, if you are startup to stay up, this is for you. And I love that we start with, the watch video right off the bat. I'm going to click on that in a second, but I want to scroll down just to kind of share with you guys what we're saying here. Every entrepreneur starts somewhere. For some, going to business starts with a dream. For others, with a need. For all, it's a journey. To succeed, you need determination, guts, and vision. And a good dose of craziness doesn't hurt. You also need support, inspiration, and the practical tools to help you grow. You're not alone. You're in good company. Find your village. So you can see the themes that we've just been talking about for the last 15 minutes are all woven into this intro paragraph. We did not waste any time just telling people this is what we're about, and especially as a way, which I always love, to say, if you're not into this, keep moving. There's plenty of other things on the internet that you can spend your time on. If you are into this, this is totally for you. And then we move into the actual meats of it right away. Here's stories, here's resources, here's events. I can actually get into these things right off the bat. For example, the resources, if I was to click on that, goes to this great resource tool. Wait for this to come up here, where as an entrepreneur, hang on, it's loading because I'm on video and surfing the internet at the same time. We have tools that people can get into to find help for them in their journey. You can, sort by these different metrics. So, for example, if you could select your interest, which is a really cool tool. I'm looking for accounting or finance or arts and entertainment or business setup. What is the thing that I need? And then I can find a resource specifically for that thing. Or maybe I'm in a particular industry. I can say, oh, I'm in the construction real estate industry. What are the resources for me in that industry? So the thing is, what we're really trying to do is use these stories as a way to bring people to these resources, because so many of these entrepreneurs, especially these neighborhood entrepreneurs who just didn't see themselves as entrepreneurs, are just doing the thing because they've always done the thing. They didn't even know these resources exist. So we're just trying to use these stories to get people to these resources so they can use them, because as you guys know, there's ridiculous amounts of resources available for entrepreneurs. The last thing I want to show you is I'm going to put up the beginning of the video I don't know if the audio will play for you guys, but I'm going to launch it and we'll see if you guys can hear it as we're going. So I think it's a really cool intro. All right, hopefully this works. Can you guys hear that?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Tell you what, we're going to kill that. And you guys can watch it on your own time because I don't want to take time.
I'll bet that most of us are already on the site.
Yeah. Okay, great. But watch the video, and I think the video, that intro to video, does a really good job of setting up that thesis statement for what In Good Co is and why you should pay attention to it. And then the first story of an ironworks here in Detroit went up, and that first story is really good. It shows a good example of what the kind of stories are going to be. Okay, so I have thrown way too much at you really fast, so thank you for your patience. I'd be happy to talk about it anymore or answer any questions you guys have.
All I can say is, wow. This is so awesome, and there's just so many things ideas this is spawning in my head, and I think based on the comments from others that it's the same. So I'm just going to shut up and I know Annika has some questions. I know Tyler's got some questions. You go, guys.
Thank you. This was amazing. So one thing we've been talking about is how do we empower ecosystem builders all around the country to do storytelling? Really simple. What's a good interview guide? How do you reach out? How do you do interviews? Are there any resources that we could pull from to put together almost like a little training package that we can share with storytellers in communities who don't have the training but have the passion? So that is there anything that I should Google or any author you say sort of holds the holy grail for that kind of storytelling? Because obviously we don't have your expertise, but I feel like there's so much we could learn from how you approach this. I'd just love to pick your brain on those resources.
Sure. I am just one part of a much larger team. So I think that's the most important part to me is, so we were able to bring I represent Skidmore as part of the larger team. Skidmore is a branding agency. We do this branding work corporately and for businesses and all kinds of things. And when we do it on the community development side like this, we bring the smarts of marketplace branding to community projects, which I think is where a lot of community projects fall apart. It's a lot of passion. It's not a lot of like strategy. So I think that to me was the eye opener, was that when we applied thoughtful strategy to the community project, I felt like that's where we achieved good results. But that only worked because it was partnered with deep community expertise. And James Fagan at People and Projects is the guy that I'll credit with that. James was the guy who knew all the people, or who knew the people who knew the people. He was the guy who's been around in Detroit for 15 years. He knew these stories. He's been working with these entrepreneurs. So when we brought NEI, who had the passion for the community development, when we brought smart, intelligent, marketplace-oriented branding work, and we brought James Fagan, who knew the people, that combination, thoughtfully and patiently built, enabled this to happen. I've also been a part of projects which were passion first and strategy not at all. Where it's like, let's just run out and do the things, just tell the stories, which is great, but it misses why do people care, and why would they continue to care, and why would they continue to build? Look at that resource section in the website. NEI had the passion and the resources to build out that resource section. Without that resource section, we're just telling good stories. Like, we have to have all of those pieces together. And so I guess as a resource, I encourage you, you could use the In Good Co website framework. Like, what does In Good Co represent? It represents stories, it represents people, or connections, and it represents resources. Those are the pieces I feel like are important to replicate this somewhere else. Unfortunately, I don't have like this is the Bible, this is the Holy Grail, here, go do this thing. Yeah, I know. Thanks.
Any other questions? So I, for me, this is on so many levels. I mean, because I think it informs something that, Tyler and I have a website along with Avery, who's not on the call, called Ecosystem Builder Hub. And I think there's so much from this that we could incorporate just in trying to advance that beyond the little MVP that it is. I think that there's so much we could document here to share with other ecosystem builders and cities across the nation to try to replicate what you did and tell the story of real entrepreneurs. I mean, there's just so much. And so one question I have is how much, if any, of the materials that you've shared with us are you willing to share the documents of so that we could actually document that and maybe put it into something, you know, a little bit less specific to Detroit, but document the process and what you did so that others can learn and do that?
Yeah, I personally would be happy to share any and all of it. I'm of the mindset that you give yourself away and people can learn from it, and that's fantastic. Let me check with the rest of the team, and especially NEI, who were the initiators of the project, to see what they're comfortable with, and I'll be happy to circle back with you to see how I can help you guys use the resources that we developed.
Fantastic. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, if Jeff didn't ask, I was gonna, but yeah, we could totally take it in white label form.
And then the other idea is, you know, in addition to that, I think the story that you've told here is a story that I would love to tell more broadly as part of the writing that I do. So I think at some point being able to review the recorded message, my notes, and maybe ping you some more for a story I did to write and publish and share, I think that'd be really awesome too.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Just, I'll echo that same thought. So the desire to give you and the team appropriate credit and attribution, and all that kind of stuff. And that way, you know, if somebody's like, you know, I love this, I love if we could do this, but we don't have the capacity, we'd love to hire somebody, you know, that way it kind of goes in your direction. Something along those lines is kind of what I thought.
So just
sure, of course,
Kasha, just to share with the folks on the call. So I've worked on projects with NEI where we've developed tools, and after the tools have been developed, NEI has been open to turning that into public commons stuff, so sharing it across the country. So some of the community development tools that that some of the teams have worked on, they've been open to sharing that outside of Detroit.
Very cool. So I will definitely be in touch with you guys to try to get work on this some more. Other questions?
Great.
Yeah, I want to ask Hassan why he didn't introduce me when I was in town. Heck, this is the kind of guy we're gonna meet. This is I wish we had you for the last ESHIP, man.
Yeah.
You would have saved us a couple of calls.
So believe it or not, Tyler, Kasha and I have never actually met in person. So I know Drew Patrick very well. So Kasha works with Drew, and I know Drew very well.
Okay.
I would say another thing, you know, Kasha, you are an ecosystem builder. You are doing the work, you know, doing what you did there is essentially ecosystem building work, basically supporting and amplifying the work of entrepreneurs. I think I'd be awesome to get you to ESHIP in 2020, and I will turn that over to Cecilia because she's involved with the planning on that. So
we can definitely extend the conversation. Yes. Because I think that, you know, when we talk about supporting entrepreneurship, you're doing it in really tangible ways.
Sure.
And that's a big part of the effort is telling entrepreneur stories. I'm hoping that Hassan will introduce you to our favorite tailors and shop down in Detroit.
Hot Sam's.
Yeah.
What the story that Kasha just told would be a great fire starter talk.
Yeah.
Really.
I think that you could definitely bring that up to Lauren, and
I will be chatting with Lauren about this. Yes.
Yes. So I think that those are wonderful things, and that's the special part about doing this is that we get to advocate for all those people that don't have a voice. And so all the people that are on these calls specifically for storytelling, and that's why we have a specific storytelling call. We know that this is basically the lifeblood that drives you, inspires you, and keeps you going when you feel like what you're doing doesn't make any sense anymore, or
Mm-hmm.
that there's no
Mm-hmm.
traction, or how do we
Mm-hmm.
know that we're getting closer? So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for doing this work, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and again, I was just one part of the larger team, so please, I'd love to put you guys in connection with other people that were on the team, so we can share whatever it is that we've learned that helps anybody else, make good decisions and tell good stories and build ecosystems and entrepreneurship in their areas. So this is, in my opinion, this is free for the taking. So happy to help in whatever way helps everybody else.
That's great.
Awesome.
And Hassan's going to introduce you to some very lovely people in Detroit who have a fabulous story. It's become a little bit of a passion project of mine to help support this company that's been in business for almost 100 years now. So,
Okay,
so
cool.
they've got a great story to tell. I'll look forward
Can't wait.
to it.
Great.
Any other questions from anybody?
No. So I want to give space to Annika, who has shared a project canvas, just to give an update to the team. Thank you for doing 2, and maybe explain to people why there was 2. And
Absolutely. Kasia, just for background, I don't know, you're probably not too familiar, but at the ESHIP Summit, we decided sort of on 7 big goals for the whole movement of ecosystem builders, sort of the sustainable development goals for the ESHIP community. And now from summit to summit, these goals are broken down into separate initiatives. And what I'm about to talk about is somehow fits into that. But basically, it's lots of volunteers across the country, ecosystem builders who work on this in their spare time, trying to make it happen. One thing that I'm really passionate about is creating content around ESHIP 2020. So the idea being we have these goals and we have a lot of people who work on these, but we don't really know who they are. We don't know who's working on what. We have a sense for some goals being more latent and not getting worked on so much, or having less traction, and others just going through the roof. So the idea was to do storytelling around these specific goals, and more specifically the people behind it. So who are the unsung heroes of ecosystem building, who don't just work in their communities but contribute to this larger movement? So the idea was to take the 7 goals as well as the storytelling initiative, which you're currently in the call with, which crosses across all goals. So that's 8 different topics for 2020, as well as a few filler topics to have 1 topic per month and sort of dig a little bit deeper. So February, for example, is diversity and inclusion. The idea is let's dig really deep and see who's working on it. What are some of the best practices we're seeing in the field? Which ecosystem builders are doing great work in their communities? What can we learn? Primary target audience are people who are involved in ESHIP, to raise awareness around what is happening in the community, what people are working on. And then the secondary audience is hopefully broader news outlets who talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, community development, those kinds of things. So as I got really excited, which I tend to do about this type of work, I had this big idea of each topic per month. We'll do 4 to 7 interviews, we'll do podcasts, and we'll do the whole shebang, right? Social media campaign and everything along with it. And then we figured out that without funding, that's not going to work. So the first canvas, we do sort of the business model canvas for each of these ideas that we have, was really big and was going to cost some money just because we need manpower to do it. And then thankfully to Jeff, he helped me break it down into something more manageable, that now we're going to do a lot more auto-generated content through Google Forms. So we'll ask for nominations within the community about, hey, who's working on a specific goal? And then the plan for now is we will be sharing a Google form with specific people, inviting them to talk about their work. And out of that, we will source 1 piece of content per month and talk about the goals sort of as a first teaser, just to show who's in it. One of our big goals is to show what diversity and inclusion looks like just across ESHIP. So we're very aware of highlighting people who don't normally get the spotlight, and really show what this ESHIP community is all about, the values, the stories, the commitment to doing this work. That's what we're doing. As an update to everybody else, it's currently Jessica Edwards, who's returned from Antarctica. I'm kidding. But from
Alaska.
Alaska. She's back in the US mainland, so to speak. Jeff and myself And we're just going to do a very MVP version of this to try out different formats, different aspects of what makes an interesting story. Our goal is to increase awareness within the community of what's happening in each goal. And in our dream, if we do it well and it works as we assume, NRPs will see the value of having these stories be told and be connected to certain goals and sort of show their leadership role in taking on certain initiatives, that hopefully in 2021 we are able to raise enough funds and do this campaign on a much bigger scale and dive really deep into difficult questions. I got a newsletter yesterday. I got so excited because we talk so much about diversity and inclusion. And the newsletter from Startup Champions Network is featuring an article about what if you have fatigue, inclusion fatigue in your organization. So we're already getting to a point of not just this is new and sexy, but to the point of, and here's where it gets tricky, and here's where you lose people in this topic. So really digging deeper into these really specific needs. So that's my update. Ask me any questions, everybody. Anyone? Did I miss anything, Jeff?
No, I think that's where I knew it was at from the last time we chatted, which is a week or two ago. And I think really that's probably the only update we have in storytelling. EB Hub is just going on, same old, same old. And I think there's been nothing new with Beth's public awareness campaign storytelling thing. Actually, there's a lot of stuff in this Detroit story that I think would be applicable there. So
she did submit a project canvas. So
okay.
let me share with you what's going on with project canvases. We do have a handful. It's not a lot. And so there's a notion of maybe putting out and showcasing the ones that we have to make them more visible to the greater community. And by greater community, Kasha, we're talking about probably a wider community of ecosystem builders, maybe about 1,200 or so that are connected with the Kauffman newsletter and engaged in some fashion. Maybe have been to ESHIP, I've heard about it, but there's probably a core group of a couple of hundred that are focused, engaged, communicating, like geeking out on this a little bit more than others are. So those are people in the Slack channel. Those are people around there. So so when we share project canvases, it gives us an opportunity to see that there's actually work being done or thoughts around it. So yes, and Jeff will share a project, a storytelling canvas kind of after the fact, but it does definitely help with visibility. So I know Hassan and Eric and I this morning brainstormed about some of the things that we could have happen around these canvases. So that's the next conversation. Yes, Annika.
I have a great idea.
Okay.
Why don't you use these handful of canvases and convince Kauffman to give $15,000 to each canvas? Because that way we lead by example and they see, hey, if you hand it in, you're actually going to get some money. These are the best case examples. And that'll kick them in the butt. Problem solved. Now we just got to raise $60,000 somewhere, but I'm sure you all know people, right?
Yeah. So I would love to do that. It is the end of the year. I still don't know where the checkbook is. So there's that. I've been looking around. Now Jeff gets to go to the foundation occasionally, and I'm sure that he still hasn't found the answer room or the checkbook yet. So we're hoping for that. No, I think somewhere along the way, I can't talk about $15,000, but I think that having submitted a project canvas, there could be something in engagement that will make sense. So that's what I'm hoping for and working on proposing. So, you know, we'll give it a try, and I will let you know as soon as I know. Just know you're on the short list now, right? So.
Cool.
So we're coming up on 5 minutes to go, and first of all, before anything else, I want to thank Kasha for taking your time today, and prior to this, in prepping for it, this was just fantastic. I got tons of value out of it. I know others did here too, so we're really indebted to you for taking the time to do this today, and definitely want to engage more after this.
Happy to do it.
Awesome, fantastic. Just love that. So here's what I want to do. So is our final wrap-up thing. Let's just do, there's 7 of us. Let's just do 1 minute. Somebody else suggested this. I think it was Megan in one of our calls, which is what's one thing that you will take away from this call today and go and try to implement? Normally I would say in the next 24 to 48 hours, but since it's a holiday, I will say within the next week. What's one thing you will take away from this today and go do? And Annika, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Because what you said, Kasia, is I write so many features and interviews and stories, but I never think about what makes this one special. So I love that you took the time to carve out these specific story arches. That blew my mind. It seems so obvious now that you said it, but man, yes, that's what we need. I think that was fantastic. Thank you. What about you, Eric? What did you take away from this call that you want to implement in the next week? And remember, you're muted, Eric. In that case, Tyler.
Not every story deserves to be shared first. That was awesome. I love that. And second, I am super happy to have this shirt now because I have an even cooler story about it. So yeah, that is definitely what I'm taking. So Kasia, I look forward to connecting with you, and thanks for that. So
sounds great.
Oh, and I will call Eric again if he's unmuted. Hassan it is.
So I will be second to Eric then.
Never.
No, so I think sometimes we end up looking for like the bright and shiny story, and we overlook what's right there and what's been there for a long time. And I know with the business that Celia always talks about here in Detroit, Hot Sam's, I mean, that's been there for 100 years. I've driven by it numerous times. I've overlooked it, and sometimes there are gems that are right there before our eyes. So I think I'm just going to take a deep breath and think about some of the things that I've overlooked that are right around me, and acknowledge some of those people or businesses. And I will turn it over to, looks like Eric is ready actually. So
that jerk. Yeah, this is some electrical work happening here, which is always exciting. So I missed a little chunk. I saw the great presentation. We're talking about kind of what are next steps about storytelling, or just storytelling in general.
What is the key takeaway from this that you will take away and do in the next week?
Yeah, so really reemphasize a lot of conversations we've had with Forward Cities about how we're telling stories and trying to make sure that we're not, that we're really getting the voice of the folks and kind of whether they want their story to be told, how they want to be represented, that kind of stuff. So, I'm going to be telling the storytelling team that they need to watch this. So I think that's my biggest takeaway. That's an easy one. In fact, I already told people that they need to get in on this video as soon as it gets posted.
And you need to ping pong or pong over to.
I have no idea who's talking.
So, so I will go and okay. So for me, it's basically I got like 20 ideas popping through my head right now, and I just need to sit down and get them all on paper so I don't forget them all, because there's so many angles and levels and meta levels of stuff I want to do from this. So that's mine. And Kasia, before we move on, I think Cecilia would be the last one. Kasia, anything that you take away from this?
Yeah, I'm surprised that I'm taking away that it's good to remember that like thoughtful, simple clarity really moves good projects forward. It's easy to just, and telling this back to you guys, reminding myself, it's easy to just be passionate and just go drive through the thing. It's harder but more fruitful and productive to be thoughtful, to be clear, to be crisp, and not to be slow, but to do it with intent. And ultimately, the end results are much stronger. Like I said, we could have done this with all passion, no strategy, but we pause. So it just, in retelling it, thank you to you guys for giving me a chance to retell the journey, because it just reminds me of that truth.
Awesome. Thank you. Cecilia, I think you are up.
Okay, so this call always reminds me that I'm probably overdue to write something, and it's good. It's good motivator to do that, and especially as we come up on Thanksgiving, year end, all those things, and trying to think about things that we're grateful for, the energy that this community provides, and so I am grateful to all of you, and inspired, and we're just gonna keep doing epic shit, and it's the most amazing thing when you get all these people together. So I appreciate all of you, and I'm not just saying that because you'll write about it. So anyway, is there anything else you'd like to share, Jeff? Oh, wait.
Nope. Emma had something.
Are we moving our next call back? Are we skipping it?
Oh, we're skipping December, right?
December 25th, which is not going to happen.
No.
Yeah.
Say either week before or 3 days later, I don't know, something, or just start fresh off in January. But I don't want to wait until the 3rd or 4th week of January to talk to you guys. It's 2 months. And I think especially there's magic in a new year. It'd be really cool to have a bit of an outlook of here's what everyone's working on for 2020. Where do we align? Where do we want to double down? That kind of thing.
Between Christmas and New Year's?
Or at the beginning of January. Yeah.
So let me know. I am totally checking out as much as I can. I am checking out on the 11th of December. I'm flying overseas. I have not seen my son in 17 months. And so we have time together in 3 countries we've never been to. So that's my plan. And I'm debating on whether or not to bring my laptop. So that's total visibility.
When are you back?
Annika, we can connect sometime between now and end of the year, early January. We'll figure something out.
If you tell me, if you want to send out a doodle, Jeff, and you tell me a time and a date, I will put together the call. I'll shift the time so that it'll auto record, and then we can share if that's what.
Won't be necessary, Jeff. I just remembered we have a call anyway, and if anyone here wants to join, just let me know and I'll send you an invite. But you and I have a call anyway.
Yeah, let's just coordinate that.
And yeah, Tyler's right. We can definitely do that on the Slack channel. Kasha, any involvement, I want you to follow your energy. You are absolutely invited to join us on the Slack channel. I don't want you drinking out of a fire hose on all this ecosystem building stuff, because it's a lot. But as we're able to share, just let us know, and we're very happy to kind of escort you into this wonderful, wacky group of people who geek out on supporting entrepreneurs. So
right, great. Thank you for the invitation. I'll take a look and see what's going to work. I will follow my energy, as you said.
Great. So I will give everybody back the rest of your day. Happy holidays, and then the conversation will be to be continued. So
right. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.